I'll let them give their background. I think that's probably more appropriate in this situation. So if you guys want to jump in, we can get you to share the screen, but the idea is you've got the floor and you can present for 10 or 12 minutes, and then we'll start throwing questions at you, or however you want to take the next part of the session. So unmute yourself. If you want the screen, you can take it, but the floor is yours.
Great. Yeah, we'll share our screens here shortly. I'm going to talk briefly about revenue strategy and the way we see it, how companies can make some really minor changes to start experimenting and seeing things take off. And Lindsey's going to talk a little bit about how she uses LinkedIn to do that, and also how to work with channel partners who resell your services. So yeah, we are Ivy League. Our company, we founded about 2 years ago as a consulting firm designed to help companies with that specific problem of developing and executing revenue strategies. Usually you hire an executive for that. That would occupy the role of a chief revenue officer. When you're a startup and desperately need that executive leadership, those people are $200,000 a year and you can't just hire them off the street. So we thought if we can provide access to group people like ourselves and a couple other partners we work with on a fractional basis, people could still have access to that executive leadership and develop those revenue strategies without having to spend a lot of money, and serves a second function, especially with startups, where we can go in and present those strategies in a way that's very well outlined for investors as to here's our trajectory, here's what we count as profit, here's what we count as revenue, here's how we expect we're going to make money and in what timeline, and this is exactly how we're going to spend the money you're going to give to us. A lot of companies go into investors with, we need $2 million for sales and marketing, and they don't really break that down at all. That whole allocation is just, well, it just means what it means and we'll figure it out. But we can help them usually secure more of those funds or put less of those dollars to a greater amount of work. And that's really what we specialize in doing. So we'll talk a little bit about some of that today. Our business has obviously evolved quite a bit because of COVID. We lost a lot of our clients at the time and then decided, hang on a sec, we could either double down and go get new clients or kind of step back and figure out if we want to look at some other opportunities, which we've been working on. But we continue to help companies, and Ivy League's still going. We brought in some help to support us on those fronts. And so now we've got some new team members who couldn't be here today, but we're meeting up with them later. And anyway, that's my intro.
Well, we don't have a ton of time, so you can probably jump right into it.
I'll just jump right into it then. Here we go. Let's share my screen. Where are you, screen?
Oh, it's this one.
This one?
Sure.
Oh my gosh, Zoom. Zoom needs a better interface. I should go sell them.
Hey.
Yeah, let me talk to your husband. He's got a.
Yeah, the Zoom rep here is gonna get his feathers ruffled.
He's gonna have to. You're gonna get like 25 feedback requests from me just today. All right. So let's do. Actually, let's see if this works. Perfect. Okay. And I will show you what I'm talking about. All right. So simple. So thinking about all the functions of a company, I look at a company in 3 sections. You've got finance, you've got operations, and you've got revenue. That's it. Nothing else in your company does anything outside of those, and that might be oversimplified, but if you want to go to business school and talk about it for 2 years, go for it. If you want to make money, this is what you do. So there are 3 functions, really simple. And I don't know if this panel is blocking the screen for everybody. So I can see that, but you can't. Okay. So marketing, sales, client success. Marketing is really simple. Marketing is designed to generate leads. Okay. So all the functions of marketing, whether you have a booth at a trade show, or if you're handing out flyers or sending out mailers, or what your logo looks like and what your brand strategy is, all those things are included in marketing, and the design of all marketing is to generate leads. There are 2 types of leads, qualified and non-qualified. Qualified leads are people who we've already identified who opt in and say, we want your service, or we want to look at more, we want to get more information, and they've qualified themselves. Non-qualified just means they fit a profile of people we might want to talk to, but we have not yet engaged with them, or they haven't opted in for any reason. We're going to reach out to them, usually in like a cold calling setting. Okay. So that all happens on the marketing side. In between that marketing and sales, I would draw like a little wavy line here, because a lot of marketers do sales jobs and a lot of sales people do marketers jobs. But the role of sales is to convert leads, period. Your job as a salesperson is to help those groups of people who've either opted in or maybe haven't opted in yet to identify needs and present to them potential solutions in a very vague and broad sense, and then bring them into an account executive who can then develop the specifics around a solution for that person. And that's really where we develop that conversion. At the point of conversion, people think they're done, right? Like, hey, we got a check, that person paid us, they're our client, we're making money. Great, everything's winning. But that's not the end. In fact, that's usually only less than halfway, where client success comes in. And the role of client success is both account management and what we call lifetime value. Okay, so it's two things. Account management can be somewhat passive, but primarily your role as an account exec or an account manager is to support people's requests. But where people miss a lot of their revenue is that they just leave that as a passive function. They don't have anyone actively pursuing new opportunities with that group. And it can't always just be done with those salespeople. A lot of times a client success person will resemble the type of person in your organization who says, I'm not really good at sales and I don't like it, but you know they're outgoing, you know that they're personable. So they usually fit in that role of client success. And their role is to convert people who've already been sold into new opportunities and offerings. And there are several places you can do that, but usually it's upselling them on new opportunities. The second place would be to invite them into partner discussions. So if you have partners who will reciprocate and bring you leads, this would be a time to bring your client list to bear and say, hey, you should look at these other offerings from our partners. And the third is to ask for referrals and generate leads. This is always where I start with clients, because most of the time they reach out to me and say, we need help with sales. We want more sales. And what they're really saying is, we want more money. We want more revenue. And I say, well, let's look at your existing pool of clients right now. And usually they'll say something like, yeah, well, we send an email out once a month and ask them for leads. And in all of these functions, it surprises me how companies just go through the motions. They look at how other people have done it and they say, well, we're doing that. We're doing that. We're doing that. And they parrot and like on repeat tell me how they're doing that. And they're really not. They're just, they're operating those functions, but they're not actually taking any kind of like any systematic experimental approach to these things. And that's really what you have to do, is just try stuff. And trying stuff is an art before it's a science. And everybody wants to approach sales like it's a science. And that's the message I guess I want to bring to bear today, is that while these things are laid out in a very structured way, the art is what really matters. And for these functions to present any value to your organization, you really have to figure out the art. And that's where a chief revenue officer or a VP of sales or someone like myself comes in and does the art to help identify, hey, this is who we should be talking to in our marketing. Because if we ask the wrong people, we invite the wrong people into our sales queue and then they become clients, it's going to change our organization. We're going to start having to sell products that we never intended to sell. And we'll have to sell a vast array of products to a lot of different groups of people. We need to segment that down into a smaller group of people and sell things we're really good at and want to be specialized in. And having those conversations early will change the fate of your company. So that's a lot of what we do. And so those are some of the considerations we help clients make. And that's what I guess I want to present to you today.
Okay.
And I'll leave some time for Q&A later, but it's now Lindsay's turn. I've been talking for 3 minutes and 21 seconds. So go.
I may have had a stopwatch. Okay, so we'll pull up we can stop really quick here.
Sure, yeah.
All right, you can pull that up in the background. So I wanted to focus on LinkedIn and how you can use that to generate business. So I've been probably actively using LinkedIn for, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years. So it takes a lot of time. I think in most cases, people just hop on, they start putting out content. If they don't see any kind of engagement or any success with it right away, then they just kind of drop off and just assume that it's just not working for them. But I think a lot of times you have to be really patient. Like I said, I've been doing it consistently for over 2 years. I'm not saying it's going to take you 2 years, but it takes time to kind of build. But I wanted to focus on a few strategies here and things that have worked really well for me in sales. I'm more introverted, so ironically, I use LinkedIn because I have a hard time going into a group of people, like a new group of people in a networking event and just like talking to them. I was super shy growing up. So I use LinkedIn because it's easier for me to get in front of a camera and post like a quick video or do like a written post or put together like a networking group than it is for me to like put myself out there, if that makes sense. So it's like, if you're an introvert, like you should be using LinkedIn because it's like the best thing ever. Because if you think about it, you're popping up in people's feeds every single day. So it's nice when you can go into like a networking event, people recognize you and they start the conversation with you and you're like, sweet, I don't have to like feel uncomfortable and go out of my way to jump on that. But here's a few things that I've done that you can consider for your company. I know I was looking at the statistics in the group here and it looks like there's a lot of service-based companies. And I think any service-based company should really leverage the platform because you're selling yourself. So you really have to create that relationship and build. What happened? Everyone disappeared.
I can still hear you.
Okay, perfect. He popped up the screen here. It's right there. Just go back to here, John.
Oh, it doesn't like you.
Okay, it's fine. I don't have to show him that. Can you go back over to the Zoom? So there's a few things. So about 2 years ago, I don't know why it's not pulling up, but pull back here. I started, oh, it's just gone all together. I started doing a Topgolf Tuesday event. So I was in a company where I wanted to connect with different groups. And so the way I did that was I did a post on LinkedIn, right? So it's like, hey, if I want to network or create my own networking event, how am I going to do this here? So I put together a post, I threw it out there, and then it started with like 2 or 3 people coming on Tuesday, and then I just like stayed in front of it, right? We post about our networking group, just like you guys do here, right? So you're posting about it, you're bringing together people virtually, right? But doing that in person when that was a thing that we could do on a larger scale. And what came from that is like you build the relationship first. So if you're a service-based company and you want to build that relationship, like one, I'm providing like a free resource for people to come and connect and network. And another thing there was I'm given the opportunity to get in front of people, those strategic partners. And that's been a big focus of mine. And that's something that I've been doing in my career for probably like the last 8 years, is connecting those strategic partners. So let's say, I'm going to throw out a few examples here. So if you are, I don't know if now CFOs on here, if you're targeting CFOs, right? They've done a really good job with, let's connect with Carta, because they're also getting in front of the same type of decision makers that we're trying to get in front of. And then together they do events together. You know, they're constantly like co-branding, co-sponsoring events together because there's a partnership there. If you look for the same type of companies that are targeting the same groups of people. And that's what I've done really for a lot of what I do. An example, there's a digital marketing company I'm a partner of right now, but they're just doing ads. So now I can go to, well, who does websites, right? So I'm going to go look at all the connections and the relationships where I have that they do websites, or who does SEO, or who does all these other things. And now you start to create your own city or your own group of people where you're feeding each other business. And that's really most of the I build relationships for this is all over the place. Yes, I do. So I do a local LinkedIn goal. We do that 3 or 4 times a year. I don't think it's a way to build my network and connect with people and establish those relationships. I help with the last Hiring Summit. I help with that. I'm not necessarily a recruiter. I'm not necessarily doing anything there. But I'm just doing it as a way to give back and to offer resources to my network. Because what happens then is I get people that approach me and they say, hey, Lindsey, what do you think? I don't have to pitch people or cold pitch on what I do, because otherwise
center, right? You're demonstrating people not just how they're like,
I was looking through like different companies that are here. So like an example would be if like you're a service-based company, let's say you build websites, right? So you can look at what are the different type of partners and the different type of services that or even content I can put out there that's going to help the community. There's a ton of SaaS companies, there's a ton, or even let's say you do development, right? There's this ton of companies out there where it's really fascinating, and I think you could start to put content around like the different projects you're building. I'm really surprised I don't see more of that. Like I would be super fascinated to see like the background, like maybe it's a 2-minute video every week where it's like I'm coding out something, I'm showing people what I'm demonstrating what I do, but in a way where it's not like here's a really boring marketing slick that I'm posting because I'm trying to sell you something. People don't want to be sold. They want to feel a connection to you. So if you can find some way, think of some ways to build that connection without like initially like pitching someone. That's really how you leverage like LinkedIn really well for partnerships, for revenue, and just a way to give back as well. So
yeah,
sorry, my slide deck's gone. I don't know what happened.
You had to beat that into my head for a long time because I didn't
Yeah.
like sharing stuff, and then
You have to get.
okay, well, it's really easy. You just hold up a video and like it doesn't matter. No one cares, and then it's gone in like a week. So
And it's gone. I know that's the biggest thing. I think people have
just do that. I'm fine.
People have the hardest time just like making that initial step, and then the biggest thing is being consistent. Like you can't do one video or one post and then not post for like 4 months. You have to kind of stay on top of it once a week. And a big part too is like, are you commenting? Are you engaging in other people's content?
I also don't do it.
Yeah, so that's how you're building that relationship, right?
I'm learning.
So you create a community through, I think with COVID, the biggest thing is like, you can't do as much of that in-person networking, and that was really hard for me initially because that's a lot of what I did. But how I transitioned was I did the virtual Get Hired Summit. I'm doing a cybersecurity virtual event. So I'm trying to do more virtual events. And then because of that, you're like LinkedIn is more important than ever, right? Because you're really having to build those relationships and connections on LinkedIn and then taking it onto like a Zoom meeting or wherever that's transitioning right now. So we can open it up to some Q&A. Oh, there's a bunch of chats. Is that the Q&A?
You had some audio issues, but I think it was when you were sharing your screen. So I think everyone was just dialoguing about that. But yeah, let's bring up the Q&A. I don't have any in my chat. Taylor usually gets some, but I think he is kind of on the go right now. So let's just have an open mic here. We've got about 10 more minutes to do Q&A. Anyone want to kick us off?
I've got a question, John, and we've talked briefly about it, but with your kind of chief revenue officer, kind of fractional revenue services, what stage of company, where do you get involved? Yeah, how does that work? Kind of give me a case study, what that looks like.
Yeah, good question. So I primarily started with startups because I realized that was the most critical phase that I could make the biggest impact, or at least that's what I thought. And then as we approached companies and had those conversations, I realized that rather than presenting us as like a whole solution, what we really do is sit down and do what I call an assessment, where we assess a business, we outline, I orient them with the principles of revenue and say, here's how things are, this is the general template for how we achieve success. And then we compare what they're doing in the day and how that's going to affect them, or where they, kind of give them a grade in a way. Where do they fit in? And so that applies to kind of a broad swath of companies, but mostly it's B2B companies who are selling technology or technology-related services. And when we have that discussion with them, we identify ways to help them increase revenue or to solve problems they've been experiencing. One of the common places people always ask are like, hey, we struggle to hire salespeople. Every salesperson we've hired sucked. And I know some of those salespeople, and I'm like, no, I don't think those salespeople sucked. It might have been you. and helping them identify how to manage and train and deal with, a sales staff, or why even introduce a sales staff when we really need better leads, and helping them identify those things in those cases. So to give you a case study, I'll give you two actually, two that are funny. One is a company that was an SEO company, right? Not really our game, and wasn't really something I had planned on or intended on sitting down with. But after I sat down with with the staff, the sales staff, I realized that we could make a lot of progress very quickly with a few little changes that I could oversee, and it would be a home run, and it worked really well. So after having that discussion and seeing like, oh, we can actually make progress here, let's get on it. Another company is Mrs. Kavanaugh's Chocolates. We had gone there to buy a bunch of chocolates for the tech summit, and never in my life had intended on having them as a client, and wouldn't think or identify them as a client. But I realized that what people were doing in the sales space, like where I'm from, even Salesforce is trying to integrate this like corporate gifting into the CRM, where after a meeting I have with you, let's say it's online and you're all the way in Minnesota, imagine that you get, a teddy bear for me or whatever next day. And hey, that's cool, I got some swag. Well, we said, why don't you start sending chocolates out to people with, the company's logo on the box, and you got everything you need. And so we kind of like helped them transition into a tech company without intending that to be the case. And then we helped them leverage some social media assets to the point where they couldn't take orders anymore, and we had to like go on pause for a month. But I guess having the discussion of the orientation of like, here's how revenue, here are the strategies, and where do you fit in, it applies to a lot of people. And so when I'm able to have that discussion and then see, it usually stems again from one issue, like, hey, we can't hire good salespeople, or we haven't figured out where our marketing's going wrong, and we get crappy leads, or we keep losing clients out the door like every other week, where our retention's terrible. How do we fix it? And it's usually a holistic approach that we take. And when we have those conversations, it's really simple for them to get like, oh, there's really small things I can do, and we can make a big impact. And someone has to oversee that, and that's why we exist. We take those problems ourselves, and they're our babies. So, good question. Anybody else? You guys ever had struggles hiring good salespeople? Turnover? Or been a salesperson who's been fired?
Who's been fired?
For doing a good job. Like, wait, I sold more than everybody else.
Who's gonna raise their hand there?
Hey, I'll do it. I've been fired 7 times for being the best salesperson.
Gonzo here. I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. With these smaller startups, or with these kind of less mature organizations, what is your recommendation for bringing in salespeople? I've gotten all kinds of advice in the past, and I think all of it has been about as much as what I paid for the advice. I'm just curious to get your perspective on, starting that sales motion with a less mature organization.
Yeah. So one of the big challenges for hiring those salespeople is to know, what are they going to do all day? Like, what is their job? And that's the fundamental problem, is that they don't have a job description. And so it's hard to incentivize them, and it's hard to know what they should be doing. And when you don't understand, or it's difficult to draw the lines between marketing and sales, those salespeople end up generating their own leads, finding leads, generating, closing, or converting, and then closing. And then they become that person's best friend, that they end up having to be the client success manager. So that salesperson ends up filling the role of a department, which is not scalable. So that's one of the challenges. But the first problem, I guess, especially with new organizations, is that usually the founders are the ones doing the sales. And so when they hire salespeople, their mandate to them is go and do what I've been doing, which is basically just tapping my network and trying to sell on goodwill. And it only goes so far. Once again, not scalable. The other challenge with hiring salespeople is that it's sometimes either too early and sometimes too late. So my recommendation is, once you have done it yourself for long enough, that's when leadership needs to come in. So not just a salesperson, but sales leadership. Because what will end up happening is you'll hire a salesperson and then become a sales manager, which is worse than being a salesperson because it's more time. You end up spending all your time managing that person instead of just going out and closing the deals yourself. And so bringing in an executive leader who can take that role over, and that's their function. And whether that's within the organization or bringing somebody in, that's usually the place to start, because then you can actually figure out what their job description is. And another challenge that prevents that is that people will take a number. Most of the time it's an arbitrary number of like, this is how many sales we want to get this year. So they divide by 12 and they deliver somebody a quota on their first day and say, here you go, you got 90 days to prove yourself. And this is your number because that's what we decided. And it is not necessarily reflective of what will end up happening. People don't ask the question of like, how long is our sales cycle? What types of companies should we be targeting? And for the most part, when you first get started, it's anybody who will say yes, but that does not make for a good profile. So we have to segment and do that work. So it's like, I know it sounds like a lot of things, but it's like, if you segment well, and then you have a job description in mind, those salespeople will naturally fit into that element. And then you can set quotas based on what you've seen performance just personally from each of them. And then you'll start to see like, okay, there's a pattern. Once those patterns start to emerge, then you can really start making specific requirements and say, okay, now we know everybody who gets on the phone and makes this amount of calls and calls this group of people should be able to get this amount of appointments or close this amount of new business. And that's how those patterns emerge, not from like, this is the number we want and then reverse engineering. That doesn't work. So I would say start with the system first. And once that's a viable system, your salespeople will be getting to succeed, even if they're bad. So that's what I tell people. It's like, even if you have bad salespeople, we can make them at least not screw up, and then you'll make money. But the system needs to be correct first.
Thanks. I think that's really sound. Appreciate it.
Awesome. We've got about two more minutes of official time. Certainly, if people have the capacity, we can kind of roll over a little bit. But any other questions that we've got from the group?
I got a question for Lindsey. How did you get the Get Hired Summit to happen in like 6 weeks? I was watching kids and like doing other stuff, so I don't even know.
I don't even know. It was crazy because I had the 3 kids at home. So I have a 10-month-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So I just took a lot of calls where I was chasing kids down the street. There's screaming kids in the background.
But you started that with like, hey, I think I can help.
Well, it's just, the biggest thing is bringing the right people. So that's if you have any idea, I'm a big believer in like, I don't try to do everything. It's just plugging in the right people. That's why I'm a big believer in like partnerships for sales and strategic partners, because you can't accomplish everything by yourself. So it's really important to bring in the right people and resources and like kind of be humble enough to ask for help, and not try to do everything yourself. So that would be my...
Hey, John and Lindsey, this is Taylor. I've got a question for you in terms of just potentially taking one of the members that are online right now and helping them walk through some ideas of how they could implement simple sales strategies. So I don't know if there's a volunteer that would say, hey, here's my 1-minute current sales strategy, and then having you guys feedback on it. But I think that might be really helpful if someone's willing to volunteer their current revenue or sales strategy and having you feedback on it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we're down.
Cool. And if anyone has to, we are at technically the end of our official time. So if anyone has to hop off, no worries, you can do that. But Ivies, if you guys don't mind kicking around for a couple more minutes.
No, that'd be cool.
Perfect. All right,
Okay.
Who wants to volunteer?
I'm thinking either Tyler Gibbs or Jeremy Williams would be good, just because I know a little bit about them and what their revenue strategy is. I'll put them on the spot unless someone else wants to volunteer before they jump in.
Throwing people on the spot here.
Yeah, I was about to volunteer anyway, Taylor. Thanks for putting me on the spot. I'm happy to do mine. My only hesitation was I'm not B2B as much, and so I thought I might not have been perfect for this. But we are a recording studio that partners with high schools. We put a mobile recording studio in the high school. We just give it to them, and they have the opportunity to let their students use it during the day, and then we let professional artists record in the studio at night, and that's where we make our monies, with professional artists at night. And we kind of fill a gap where people can't afford traditional recording and they don't like the traditional recording experience. Kind of there's an elitist culture around that, and so a lot of the younger artists want to record with us, and we're able to fit their budget as well. Because our cost is extremely low with that strategy of putting a studio at a school and going from there. So our current sales process our current sales cycle is honestly not very well built out. I'll just start off by saying I know it's not good. I would say keeping track of it, we've about 85% of our customers of our leads are generated just by word of mouth from our current customers. So it's pretty much out of our hands. It's just totally luck right now. We've tried Facebook ads. We've tried networking events. We've done concerts for some of our artists, and that has been helpful in finding other artists. We've tried other social media things. We've tried YouTube ads. And it seems like from all the ads we've done, there has been negligible results in lead generation. From the concerts have probably been the best, like us taking control and trying to generate leads. We've gotten, I'd say at every concert we do, we find 2 or 3 musicians. Obviously COVID's kind of killed that right now. And then once that's kind of what we're doing to generate the leads. Once the lead is taken, our engineers, we just use a CRM. The engineer immediately takes over, and so the audio engineer is kind of having to run double duty with doing the audio production and working with the customer. So there's quite a bit of inefficiency there.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes, I've got 2 questions. And one is, what have you seen a pattern emerge from the people who are opting in? Like, are they all country singers? Are they all pop singers? Like, or is it all just varied?
Definitely a trend. And I think it's mostly location based. Right now we're targeting charter schools that help Title I students. And most of those areas pretty much are all hip hop, rap, pop. Yep.
Okay, that's good. Because like I'm a musician too, right? I'm way into metal. So if I were seeing an ad, I'd want it to say like, we're the specialists in metal recording and you can get it done for super cheap and use like high-end stuff. Oh, that's cool. So I get that. One other thing I would consider as a revenue strategy is that eventually you start charging the schools money. Like it's like the first one's free kind of thing. If kids can be in there and record their music and they're sending that to colleges and their applications or whatever, if they're trying to get to Juilliard's or something, right? And they're a violinist, I would try pushing on that a little bit, is like maybe say, hey school, by the way, we're going to start charging money in 4 months or whatever, or next semester. So if you want to keep it, pay up. And they might be at a point where they're like, oh my gosh, this thing's worked out super well. And then you get some revenue that way, or some type of upsell on top of that. The other consideration I would make is that, the sound engineer, at least my experience with sound engineers, is that they don't make for great people. So they're not people.
Definitely.
So and I'm sure you've experienced that too. When running a CRM, it's like, they're not going to get around. I mean, they'll probably put in more notes than any salesperson, but they're not going to actually get the thing to work. That's one of the challenges I have with people with CRMs. It's like they use the CRM to build reports and like answer questions, but they're not actually using it to close deals. And that's one of the inherent flaws with CRMs, that they're designed to report to the executive team, and they're not designed to enable salespeople to be successful. And that's how you need to shift and move your CRM. And if it does that, then you'll get all the reports you want. But anyway, so those are two places I would consider. The third thing I was thinking was that boots on the ground. Like as soon as you started telling me, my instinct was like, boots on the ground is the way to go. Ads will become effective later once you have enough of those boots on the ground organic experiences that you can reverse engineer. Like, these are our clients. We know who they are. And now we know how to speak to them, because that's the effectiveness of ads. Ads, you can get as much in front of people as you want. You can spend a lot of money to buy a market. Look at Domo, right? But if you don't know who your market is, it doesn't matter how much money you spend. So I would try first to segment down a little bit and figure out who those people are. And maybe that's just going to require you to grind and go boots on the ground and go to concerts and
there's not a lot right now.
Go to clubs, right?
Whatever's going on.
Or start hitting people up on Spotify, right? Like, hey, you've obviously recorded something. Why don't you go take it to the next level? Because when you first started talking about it, that's a really cool idea. As a music guy, it'd be nice to have even a high school sound studio, like pretty decent equipment that I'm going to pay for. It's already invested in. Why not put that to work,
I just had a really good idea.
Oh, Lindsay's idea. Let's go.
Sorry, real quick. So the direction everyone's going, because everything is getting hit so hard with in-person events. And on the business side, I've noticed a lot of companies are starting to launch podcasts. So a revenue channel I was thinking you could do is like a membership for, because the cool thing is, like, if I'm doing a podcast, I don't have to do it in the same location. So a lot of times you're trying to get people from like all over the county. So if you have several sound studios, like in all these different schools, you could go after the businesses who do have a budget and do have money for marketing and just charge them like a membership fee, and they would have access to any of and just like get whatever software to do the scheduling and coordination. That's a whole business within itself. It's like that way you're not chasing musicians, you're chasing businesses, and plenty of businesses want to do podcasts. So that might be a direction you may have to shift or look to shift because of what happened with COVID. I think there's a lot of potential there.
That's a
great. I love that concept. It's been the concept we've been looking at a little bit, and I guess I've struggled with how to enter into the business world with that, because we actually have that infrastructure already. One of the things we offer is that because we were trying to address the DIY market, musicians, they can get on a membership where they have private access to the studio. They can come in and use our equipment anytime, and then we just do the mixing and the mastering for them. And so we have that infrastructure to take that podcasting idea. So I think I'd like to look more into that.
Because we have a few connections that are like big podcast people, right? So we can connect you to a few people that can get you in front of a lot of the podcasters.
Email us after. John Dinkle is someone I'll connect you with.
Because if you have the resource and he can and that's a partnership opportunity, right? Like if he brings you a person, you give him a little bit of a spiff. Like that's what you look at, like the big people that are connected to all the podcasters. And then you don't even have to hire a salesperson. You just go to that person. Maybe you give them a little spiff for every person they bring on to your like membership or whatever that looks like, if it's reoccurring. And then that's how you get in front of the most people the quickest.
Yeah. Also, one other thing would be, I would try to angle in and figure out how I can get schools money from this. Maybe it's a rev share, and then you can probably get access to grants and other things. You can get government money. No shame in that. Take the government's money. I mean, it's your money, really. Mm-hmm. Taxation is theft. So there you go. Those are some thoughts.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, I think we're approaching near the top of the hour. Maybe one more question, a quick question for the Ivies here, and then we'll wrap up for the day. If anyone's got anything.
Did you want me to run my little thing by them, or or you want me to wait? Okay.
Let's do it.
All right, Cliff Notes. Okay. All right, so what I do is I'm in the exciting world of auditing healthcare providers. Now, For the last 10 years, I worked for government contractors that went after providers for health for fraud, waste, and abuse. So I said, okay, since I know all this stuff, what if I reverse that and went to the healthcare provider and say, hey, I could do an external audit, identify risk, and help you draft a mitigation plan. So that way, when the insurance auditors come by, you'll be, you know why they come in and help you stay on the up and up. And so initially targeting was chiropractors, various things like that. So from a marketing standpoint, doctors are hard to get a hold of. They really are, because with COVID, you don't just walk in the office. I have access to know who accepts like Medicare, Medicaid, not a problem. I've done one podcast, need to record some others. I've done some videos, try to talk to various law firms and providers. But so what I usually do for service is a one-time audit, hopefully with a retainer. I can also consult them if they are in the middle of an audit. So I'm butchering that, but that is like the Cliff Notes version of where we're at. And so far it's been unsuccessful. I'm trying to find door-to-door is not an option. So there's you could go a cold email campaign. That's very slow and agonizing. So anyway, Ivies. So what you think?
No, that's great. So how many clients have you got thus far, and how long have you been in business?
The business started in March, like literally the week the governor shut down and everything.
Oh, okay.
Good time.
So it was a great time.
Yeah, cybersecurity coming.
We had the same problems. We're like, oh, shoot.
So, I mean, just really a handful. I mean, I've talked to several clients. I mean, I've probably advised 3 formal audit. I did a full audit on 1, but I've advised 4 on various things. But
what kind of clients were those?
One was a pediatric dentist. One was, the actual audit was for a chiropractor. Advised another chiropractor who's interested in a full-fledged audit, but what we're running into is like his patient capacity is down to 30%. And so it's, it could be a little costly to do that. So,
Okay.
So our idea is we reduce the stress and costs associated with audits. Sometimes you don't know until you have one, but
yeah.
I've got stories galore, but that's kind of.
Yeah, it's tough because it's like it's hit and miss in medical.